Come home right now. My lunch is obviously more important." That booming voice echoed throughout the room during my father's funeral. The voice belonged to my stepmother. She likely sat at home, doing nothing, while we mourned my father, who had passed away at 55. I was stunned, and beside me, my stepfather was visibly trembling. It was trembling from anger. He immediately declared to my stepmom, "We're getting a divorce," and hung up the phone. The funeral proceeded without further incidents, but my relentless stepmom showed up later to say I was wrong. "My name is Zoe, and I'm 28 years old. My husband, who is 2 years older, is named Mike. When we got married, we began living with my in-laws. At first, I had wanted a life just for the two of us, but my mill insisted on us moving in with her. She claimed to be lonely without her son around. But that wasn't the real reason. She wanted me to serve as a convenient housekeeper. On the first day we moved in, she told me, "Zoe, you'll be handling all the housework from now on. You're the daughter-in-law. It's a given." By emphasizing the word daughter-in-law, she made sure I had no way out. I had planned to continue working, assuming that she'd help out. But then came her declaration. Since that day, I juggled work and household chores. As for my mill, she seemed to be out most days. When she was home, she insisted I prepare her lunch. I often fumed internally, thinking she could at least feed herself, but never said it out loud. If I spoke up, she'd retaliate with, "How dare I'll talk back to her mill. Maybe you should make my lunch every day." Not sure if I'll eat it though, LOL. I can't even be sure if she's eating the lunch I prepare. So speaking up about it is out of the question. I simply grit my teeth and endure my days with my mill, saying nothing. I put up with this for a year. My mill is as unhelpful as ever, neither assisting with house chores nor showing any signs of stopping her incessant nagging. Lately, my own housekeeping skills have improved considerably, leaving her with fewer opportunities to make snide comments. So, she's resorted to petty tactics just to have something to complain about. She'll deliberately scatter clumps of hair on the carpet or sprinkle dust around the living room. The amounts are so excessive that it's a mystery where she even collects it all from, making the cleanup a real chore. Every time she smirks at me and says, "Zoe, your cleaning is subpar," I can't help but think, not this again. Amidst enduring these petty actions, I got a call from my mom back home. My father had collapsed. I rushed to the hospital, where tests revealed he had terminal cancer. He was only 55. Young, and the cancer progressed so quickly, we didn't notice in time. His time was limited to 6 months. He declined aggressive treatment, opting for quality time with my mom. We respected his wishes. At first, my mom wanted to try anything to extend his life, but she eventually chose to honor his desire not to endure painful treatments. I planned on doing everything I could to support my parents in living their remaining days as peacefully as possible. Mike said, "Focus on your parents. We'll handle things here." I thought my mill would pitch in, but she said, "I have no intention of doing housework anymore. If you want to care for your parents, make sure you finish our chores first." The concept of helping each other seems foreign to my mother-in-law. I took a leave from work. My boss was understanding and granted me family medical leave. My coworkers were supportive too, telling me to take my time and that they'd handle things at work. Despite my boss and colleagues showing such compassion for my father's situation, I couldn't believe my mill's attitude. I soon realized asking for her help in household chores was futile, so I managed all the chores at my in-laws' place and then went to my parents' house. Mike offered to help, but his mother wouldn't allow it. So, without telling my husband, I took care of all the chores at my in-laws' place by myself. I wanted to spend as much time as possible with my parents during the day, so I sacrificed my sleep to do the housework at my in-laws' house. To be honest, it was tough physically, but my determination to not lose to my mother-in-law kept me going. My dad, who had received a terminal diagnosis, spent his last 6 months peacefully with my mom. In his final moments, my mom and I were there with him. Though frail, my dad had a content look on his face. We could barely hold back our tears. In the end, my dad told my mom, "I love you forever," before passing away. I thought my dad was amazing. After that, my mom cried endlessly. Tears that wouldn't stop. Though I couldn't help but cry too, I didn't have the luxury of time. There were arrangements to be made for the wake and funeral. Once we were done saying our goodbyes as a family, my husband and father-in-law came to help. "We haven't been able to help you up till now. Let us handle the preparations from here. We'll consult you about the funeral plans, so please stay with your mom in the meantime," my husband kindly offered. I gratefully agreed to stay by my mom's side. In the meantime, my husband and father-in-law efficiently took care of various things. There was no sign of my mother-in-law. I wasn't surprised, actually. Honestly, I wasn't expecting any help from her to begin with. My mother-in-law didn't even show up for my dad's wake or funeral. Many people who cherished my dad attended the wake and the funeral. It was clear how much he was loved. During that time, my mom either stared blankly at my dad's altar or broke into tears. For my mom, coming to terms with my dad's death is probably still difficult. Occasionally, she would approach my dad's coffin and grimace, as if wanting to express her displeasure at him being confined there. The wake proceeded without a hitch, thanks to my husband and father-in-law. Yet, my father-in-law still apologized for my mother-in-law's absence, promising she would be at the funeral the next day. But we all knew she wouldn't show up. It was heartbreaking to see my father-in-law look so apologetic. The next day, the weather was perfect for sending my dad off. Many people attended the funeral of my dad, who passed away at the age of 55. As expected, my mother-in-law was absent again. "I'm so sorry, Zoe. My wife isn't answering her phone. I'll give her a piece of my mind later," my father-in-law apologized. What did my Mill hope to accomplish by making her husband apologize so much? Even if she didn't like me, it was basic decency to attend as a family member. I overheard other relatives whispering, "Isn't Zoe's Mill going to come?" I'm sure my father-in-law heard too. It was heartbreaking to see my father-in-law's discomfort each time. And then, my Mill would go on to cause another problem. During the funeral, my phone kept ringing. Of course, I couldn't answer during the ceremony, but when it ended, I took the call. It was my Mill saying, "Come home right now. Preparing my lunch is your priority." Accidentally, I had answered in speaker mode, so everyone heard her. Ask me to make her lunch. Despite whispers about my mother-in-law's absence at the funeral, she had the audacity to call and ask me, her daughter-in-law, about lunch. Her insensitivity left me stunned. I had a faint hope that the call would be about her coming late to the funeral, but alas, it wasn't. After all, she's not a monster. I thought she'd say at least that much. But for her to call about her own lunch, clearly, she's the one who doesn't get it. Now, someone was trembling at my Mill's words. My father-in-law. He was absolutely livid, his anger erupting like a volcano. Hey Karen, do you even realize what you just said? This is a funeral service for Zoe's dad. How could you say something like that? You're worried about your lunch. Make it yourself. Who do you think you are? And why are you at home, lounging around? That's it. I'm done. We're getting a divorce. Well, he just threw the D word at her. My Mill was served with divorce papers. But it seems like my Mill, on the other end of the phone, still didn't grasp the situation. Huh? Why did my husband answer the phone? I was trying to call Zoe. And what's this about divorce? I'm not getting a divorce. I decided to clarify the situation for her. Sorry, Mill. I accidentally pressed speaker mode when answering the phone. Everyone at the service heard your first words. That means my father-in-law and all the relatives heard it too. Suddenly, my Mill started to panic. What? Speaker mode? You mean everyone heard that? Why are all these people attending the funeral of my daughter-in-law's dad anyway? They shouldn't even bother. She had forgotten she was still on speakerphone. By the way, Mill, you're still on speaker mode. Everyone's listening. You sure you want to say all that? Zoe, you're doing this on purpose. And you, turn off speaker mode. Karen, that's enough. Don't say another word. I don't want to hear it. My father-in-law then ended the call and immediately knelt down in front of everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the uncomfortable situation. My wife has been rude on this significant day, and I'll make sure she takes responsibility later. Can we please proceed? At the funeral, people were saying, it's totally the Mill who's at fault. The father-in-law shouldn't have to apologize. He must have a tough time with a wife like that. Zoe must have had a hard time, and so on. The crowd had condemning words for my Mill, forgiving words for my father-in-law, and sympathetic words for me. Then my mom came over. Let's continue the funeral for Dad. The mood seemed to shift back to paying respects. After the cremation, we all went back to my family home. We'd heard from the funeral staff that a disheveled middle-aged woman had shown up yelling Dad, but had been sent away. It was probably my Mill, but I didn't mention it to my father-in-law. I couldn't care less about her trying to get back in his good graces by showing up. Later, my father-in-law apologized to my mom again. I'm really sorry for the disturbance today. Though it was all my Mill's fault, it was heartbreaking to see my father-in-law having to clean up the mess. My mom likely understood this as well. I understand, my mom said. Everyone knows it's not your fault. It's your wife who was disrespectful. My mom seemed unforgiving towards my Mill, probably because she now understood the ongoing mistreatment I'd been enduring. During the last 6 months with my dad, I'd show up at my parents' looking tired. Mom must have been wondering why. I think all the dots connected for her now. That's probably why she unhesitatingly called out my Mill as bad. The doorbell rang. I thought it might be someone who couldn't attend the funeral. There stood my Mill, disheveled but somewhat dressed for the occasion. I was taken aback. My husband noticed my reaction. What's going on? Who is it? It's your mom. Seriously? My husband peered at the screen as well. What's she doing here now? I just reported that my mother-in-law showed up at the funeral home. My husband said, so she's here to protect herself after Dad told her he wants a divorce? Ha, just ignore her. Let's pretend we're not home. Even though he said that, my father-in-law's car is parked in the driveway. Can we really pretend we're not home? I started to worry. When we didn't answer the doorbell, it kept ringing. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. No matter how many times it rang, we didn't respond. Finally, my mother-in-law, losing her patience, started yelling at the front door. Bob, I know you're in there. I will never accept a divorce. I've done nothing wrong. It's all Zoe's fault for not preparing lunch today. Why should I suffer like this? Come out and apologize to me right now. She shifted the blame onto me. If she had shown any remorse, someone might have forgiven her. What a foolish woman. I sneaked a glance at my father-in-law. He seemed to be shaking with anger. Yep. There's no mending this relationship. That's how it felt to me. My mom was also making a disgusted face. What happened next? My angry father-in-law greeted us briefly and left, pulling my mother-in-law back to their house. We got a message from him saying, "Don't bother coming back today. I'm going to have a serious talk with your mill." Later, he formally presented divorce papers to her. She won't accept it, of course. But he's set on getting a lawyer. I question my mill's sanity for thinking she could get away with her behavior, especially after causing such a scene at my dad's funeral. It seems like the matter will escalate to divorce mediation. But my father-in-law will surely fight this through. All I wish for is a swift divorce so that my father-in-law can be free from her. My husband also decided to cut ties with his mother. He foresaw her running to him once the divorce is finalized. He has no intention of forgiving her for all the mistreatment she's given me. It's obvious she'll end up divorced and abandoned by her son. She'll have to work to support herself. I hope she sees it as karma for tormenting me and ruining my father's funeral. As for us, we're moving out. Our life as a married couple is about to begin anew. Though it might be a bit tight financially, we're happy about our newfound freedom. We've been married for almost 2 years now, and it feels great to be starting fresh. We also chose to live near my mom to support her. I wanted to do something for my mom after losing my dad. My husband even suggested having frequent dinners with her. We're looking forward to a joyful life, discussing our future plans for children and the like.